I said, okay, we should target to go public by December. I was like, okay. Then I put down the phone. I call him back and like, you mean December 2025, right? It's like, no, December 2024. I'm like, that's literally 4 months from now.
In 2024, talabat was the largest tech IPO in the world. Congratulations on that. We rarely hear stories like that. So I'd love to get all the details from you. Tell me more about that process. How were you as a team able to make that happen? How did you guys handle the pressure that came with it as well?
So I think the IPO story is a bit of a fun story because, as you probably know, talabat up until the IPO was fully owned by a larger group called Delivery Hero, which is listed in Germany. And the decision came in around July, August actually, when the group CEO called me and told me, I think we should make this happen, right? And I was like, great. And I said, okay, we should target to go public by December. I was like, okay. Then I put down the phone. I call him back and like, you mean December 2025, right? It's like, no, December 2024. I'm like, that's literally 4 months from now. I was like, yes. And so I think we managed to put together an IPO in 4 months in pure talabat style. I think it was one of the fastest IPO in history.
Are you serious?
No,
4 months.
True story. So I think it was super intense, but I think, one thing that is truly true to the core DNA of talabat is that we're very good at execution, right? And once we put something in our minds, usually we manage to get there. And it was an incredible experience. We were on the road meeting investors, local investors, international investors. And it was so amazing to see that we've been building this business heads down for the last 5 years. And we never, stopped and thought about, okay, what did we build? What are we going to build, etc. And once we started meeting investors, everybody was like, guys, you have the best business in the world. Like, you have the best food delivery business in the world. This is really amazing, right? And we're so excited that we got so much recognition, from also outside our turf and American investors and everything like that. So it was an extremely amazing experience for all of us, and to see that level of recognition.
And I took the watch off my wrist and I said, sell it. When we realised that Love Luxury was something that we wanted to progress and move forward with, we sold those companies. We sold those and we used every penny of that. We didn't go, oh, great, we've sold our company, let's go on holiday, let's buy a fancy car, let's buy a nice watch. We put every penny into Love Luxury, and we ate noodles for like 18 months. I'm not even lying. When I say that, people are like, well, whatever. No, we literally ate noodles. I used to spend 6 hours a day driving in my car to get to and from work to make the business work. And we made a lot of sacrifices. It was quite short term because it grew so fast. We were very lucky that we hit the nail on the head at the perfect time. But we just made sure that whenever something was sold, that profit went back into the business, and that we were able to then get something else. And we just kept doing that. We just kept funneling it back in all the time. We never took anything out. And then there was a time when we were building the shop in Beecham Place that we were short. And my husband said, what are we going to do? And I took the watch off my wrist and I said, sell it. And so it was the ability to be able to part with the worldly goods and the things that we were holding on to that enabled us to progress in the business. I had no problem taking that watch off my wrist, and I didn't replace it until my husband bought me this one. So, it was not a problem for me.
I was 45 years old. I was at that point in my life where I felt like it's now or never.
What inspired you to start Stars Play?
So Dania, there's, with these types of journeys, there's always a combination of reasons. For me personally, it wasn't like one aha moment, or it wasn't like, I woke up one day and I decided to do this. It wasn't anything like that. It was perhaps a culmination of a few things coming together. Perhaps the biggest one was I was 45 years old. I was at that point in my life where I felt like it's now or never. Had a stable job, nice bonus. Everything was where it should have been, where I wanted to be. But then at the same time, there was still something missing. And I felt, professionally speaking, that this was something that was missing from my life. I always wanted to do a startup that I've started and I've built.
When you say you waited for the right time, what do you mean by that?
I'd worked in Silicon Valley in the 90s, early 2000s, and I'd been part of three startups, but I'd never started a company from scratch. I was part of teams that built startup businesses, but I wasn't the CEO and I wasn't the founder. And, like most things in life, we always try to optimize and find the right time to do the right thing. And the time keeps going, right? Time doesn't really wait for you. And then you get to a point where you realize that I've been trying to find the right time all my life. And now I'm running out of time. And that's kind of what happened to me. Was I was sort of forced into it.
It was chaos. I literally had to dip into every bit of liquid net worth I could access, beg, borrow, and steal capital to fund the business.
It's great having everything on paper, but then when you come in practice and see how there's uptake to the product, how was that though? Did it match the projections you had in those very detailed?
If I'm honest, it exceeded them. One of the lessons I learned, which I'd never, ever thought about, all of my years as an investment professional, you always focus on the downside. You stress test the model. You have scenario analysis, right? And it's always thinking about the downside. I never, literally, upside risks are not equally likely. Often there is a bias toward downside risk because we inherently have optimism biases. But there are upside risks. And what we did that it led me to, I now espouse this, what I call the rule of 40. Plan your business and your capitalization to ensure that you could survive it taking 40% longer, it underperforming 40%, but also outperforming 40%. Because you can grow yourself into bankruptcy too. And that almost happened to us. We had modeled that, and I'll even say the numbers now because there's some public data out about our yields. In first year, we thought on what's called the tomato on the vine, the trust tomato. It's kind of the bellwether of the industry. And so we thought we would do 68 kilos in the first year, 75 in second, and 85 in the third. And we would plateau at 85-ish to 90 maybe one day. Well, we hit nearly 90 in the first year. And not only that, out of the gate, in the first few months, we had what's called a bumper harvest, a flush of production. It was chaos. We didn't have the money to buy packaging or to hire temporary labor to help with that harvesting, fertilizers, stock, trucks. It was chaos. I literally had to dip into every bit of liquid net worth I could access, beg, borrow, and steal capital to fund the business in the time it took me to go run a bridge race. So literally we opened the farm and I was out raising capital 3 weeks later. It was chaos. And it almost killed us. We almost went into bankruptcy. I mean, because of outperforming our estimates. And so it was a good problem to have. But on the other hand, it woke me up to an idea that, yeah, you have to plan for the upside risk too.
That's definitely a great problem to have. But how did you feel in that moment? Were you unsure? Were you scared?
I think I felt something all entrepreneurs feel, that, and it never really leaves you though, but it probably becomes more manageable, but sort of you feel imposter. You feel, oh God, like what have I done? Do I know how to solve this? How quickly can I? I remember we had these best laid plans about how careful we'd be about tracking KPIs and data. And I thought I'd have all this time as the yields started to come out. And instead it was pandemonium, right? And I'm like, am I equipped to handle this? So I think that, yeah, there was fear only in that I didn't want to let everyone down. And also fear in that I told you how financially conservative I had to believe in my ability to raise bridge capital because I put in hundreds of thousands of dollars, which was a lot of money to me, to bridge the company, just injected it and got friends to do the same. And sorting out, like we'll sort out the details and the terms of that later, just get money in the company right now. And that was scary, you know. On the other hand, I think I did have confidence that though the yields that were coming out would prove, you know, better than the model we had. And if investors backed that model, they would back this better story. But it was chaotic early on. You know, it was those first months, and also trying to find markets. We hadn't aligned, like we'd focused on 2 customers at the time. It was Carrefour and Spinneys. And because we didn't think we'd have more product for more. And then we had to like find offtake. We were donating it to labor camps, and we were finding all kinds of things to do, donating it to schools because we couldn't move the product fast enough and open up channels. And there were like 3 of us, right? And then the team that was managing the farm day to day. So yeah, it was a scary time.
The same portfolio held by a woman versus a portfolio held by a man, there'll be a slight outperformance on the women front.
What are some of the biggest myths about money and wealth that you have seen?
The fact that investing is complicated. And I know that all 3 of us, my co-founders and myself, when we started Sarwa, one of the key things we focused on in terms of communication is to remove all jargon and uncomplicate, right? I think a lot of the financial institutions that are more traditional complicate things because they need to bring that value and say, we can do it, you can't do it. And I think to us, it was very key to simplify it and to say, it's not that complex, it's not that complicated. And you can do it in a simple way, right? Another thing that on a personal level is for women to invest. I think that's something that we keep seeing, that they think they don't have enough information. But I think once they put that foot into the door, then they realize that they actually do.
100%. And a lot of women around us just give that responsibility automatically to either their father, their husbands, their brother, any male figure in their life, because they think that they don't have the right skills to take charge of their own finances, which
Correct.
Is so not true and very sad as well.
It's a big myth, yes. And I agree. I mean, the reality of, I'm pretty sure you've heard that the data point that women's portfolios generally, when if the same portfolio held by a woman versus a portfolio held by a man, there'll be a slight outperformance on the women front, because what data is showing that these portfolios tend to be held for longer and touched less, right? So it's just about more of a behavior where they don't necessarily buy and sell. They just like to hold. And that historically has outperformed. So it's a very interesting data point to show also, not only you can do it, but you can also do better.
Yeah. And how was your experience as a woman in fintech?
Silence. Look, it was very interesting. I would love to get to a point where we go beyond that inflection point. And I think there is more and more women entering the field for sure, but not enough.